ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरि ओम ओम भारत अमेरिका पुण्य भूमिया नमः. Namaskaram, Ashwat Garu, and all our friends and guests. I would like to again make a couple of statements without taking much of time of Ashwat Garu. It's been a great experience for last 1 year and a half. Ashwat Garu has been kind to join us to deliver this lectures learning series. This happens to be today the 13th. Ashwat Garu has been teaching us, telling us of various acharyas and what we have been learning. Today, Ashwat Garu will be talking about the Aranyakopanishad, Ritual to Realization. For those of you who have joined first time, I want to introduce Ashwat Garu, our acharya. He is a very well-known and well experienced and trained in acharyas and Vedic philosophy and Sanskrit. He's a Vedic scholar and a training in Sanskrit from his grandfather, Sri M.S. Shastri Garu, who was Vidwan of Mysore court. He also had received formal training in Vedas for 9 years from Acharya of Ajurveda, Acharya Vedurveda, Professor Ananta Krishnan at Bangalore Sanskrit College. And he himself has been teaching Veda and Vedanta to several of our students since 1995. He continues to teach Sanskrit, Bhagavad Gita, and many Upanishads on Zoom, and we have been experiencing and educated with an extensive knowledge in areas. So, without taking much of time, I would like to introduce to you Ashwat Garu, Namaskaram Guru Garu, Sri Gurubhyo Namah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those very, very generous words. Thank you very much, Narayanan sir, for again inviting me to speak this year also. And as always, Parthiban sir's support is absolutely indispensable. Thank you very much. So looking forward to another years of study. There are some advantages in this consistency. That is, therefore, we can structure our studies in a very orderly manner, and then we can build upon the units of knowledge that our sages have, with such kindness, have given to us. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Sahana Vavatu Kanao Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadidamastho Mavidvishavahi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste, dear friends. Thank you very much. I am a very strong advocate of rituals because in the ritual, the daily called Nitya, occasional called Naimittika, and congregational rituals, it is because of these that Sanatana Dharma is preserved. Just imagine if, like some of the other cultures, outstanding cultures, if like them, we had also given up ritual, then definitely Sanatana Dharma would not have survived. And so there is a great contribution made by ritual. Now, while the concept and practice of rituals has been preserved, appreciated, admired, and participated, changes in application of the ritual And changes in the attitudes towards the ritual has inevitably happened over the last several centuries, 30, 40 centuries. It is not as though suddenly we in the modern context have rebelled or criticized against ritual, but it has been there from the beginning. A re-evaluation of ritual has always gone on. Otherwise, Samhitas, we have talked about the structure of the Veda in our earlier classes, so I presume that our earlier classes are available to you, and therefore I'll not go back and then explain the same thing again. So the Samhitas could have been enough. We need the four Samhitas, Rigveda, Yajurveda, Sama, Atharvana Veda was enough. So why was Brahmanas created? Brahmanas was created so that you bring it into a ritualistic concept, so that all the knowledge that is encapsulated in Samhitas are actually practiced. Using those mantras are actually practiced. So we could have stopped at that. Samhitas and Brahmanas could have been enough. So why should Aranyakas and Upanishads come back and then have added to the corpus of the Vedic literature? I'll give an instance, a couple of instances. For example, yajnas, which were extremely popular at one point of time, such as Ashwamedha, such as Vajapeya, the Somayaga, have all but become extinct. In fact, a couple of times people have attempted to do Somayaga. In fact, Fritz Stahl and others have actually witnessed and wrote an extraordinary book called Agni uh, by witnessing the Somayaga that was done in Kerala. So that is far and few. And moreover, it was done more to bring back and then relearn how Somayaga was done, Vajapeya was done. But it is not as ubiquitous. It is not as far reaching as it used to be in the olden days. So what happened in the process? The yajnas and those yagas, we have replaced it by puja and homa. So puja and homa is flourishing, absolutely flourishing everywhere, all over the world. Yeah, wherever there are Hindu temples, wherever there are groups of Hindu people, pujas and homas have continued to go on. So even the yajna idea itself has undergone change. There was a time when people asked, why should we do yajna? I'm going back to the Vedic times. The answer they used to give was Nishkaranam Yajeta. So they used to say, you have to perform yajna, that is all, for no reason. Translated, do yajna, don't ask why. So that was how questions were actually handled. So yajnas were also performed to get material comforts both here and hereafter. For example, Vajapeya. Vaja means food, Peya means drink. So you perform a Vajapeya yaga so that you can have plenty of food and drink. Obviously, now what has happened? Because of the human genius and technology, food security has been of less interest than it used to be in the ancient times. Transportation, for example. And therefore, we need not do a Vajapeya Yaga today for the sake of assuring food security. Then they also used to conduct what is known as the Jyotishtoma Yaga. Svargakamo Jyotishtomena Yajeta. There is a Brahmana mantra. So you do with the Jyotishtoma. Again, why should you ask for going to Swarga? So that the dvandva, the problems of Shita, Ushna, the vagaries of the climate, and there used to be floods and there used to be droughts and all those things. For that sake, they used to do your Jyotishtoma, and then they'll say, okay, let us go to heaven where everything is perfect. And now we don't have to worry about heat and cold. Technology has made our life very comfortable. Then also, one more transition was happening in the fervor for the yajna. Many a time, people did go to extremes. For instance, it is a natural desire for every human being to procreate. That's why they get married. They say that I want to get a son. And getting a son, even to this day, getting a child is of extraordinary importance. Look at all the fertility clinics which are flourishing. In the ancient times, what they did was they used to do yajna, a putra kameshti yajna. We know that Dasharatha did a putra kameshti yajna. But sometimes it went to extremes in the desire to get a child. They would do anything. In the Aitareya Brahmana of the Rigveda, there is the very well-known legend of Shunashepa. And of course, this story is also recounted in the Ramayana as Valmiki Maharshi takes the young Rama and Lakshmana on the way to his ashrama to slay Tataki. Vishwamitra recounts the lineage of the Ikshvaku kings. And as part of the Ikshvaku kings, Harishchandra was one of them. So these and other events that happen, they're historic. These events set the stage for Aranyakas and Upanishads. So a stage has to be created. We already see those stage being created in the Brahmana time. To illustrate that point, let me recount the story of the Harishchandra and his desire to get children. Harishchandra, he was a king of the Ikshvaku dynasty. We know that in that dynasty, Sri Rama was born. Harishchandra had 100 wives. It was typical in the olden days. You get married, and within 1 year or so, or within even 3 months, she should conceive. Just as a sidebar, I can say that there is in Brahmana, there is a dictum which says, as soon as the menstrual cycle of the wife is over, then the couple should attempt and get a child. If that doesn't happen in the first menstrual cycle after the wedding, the person would go and marry again. This is what the kings were doing. So that is how Harishchandra gets 100 wives, but then doesn't get any children, doesn't get a son. And the son is required not only for emotional reasons, but also they need an heir for the throne. So therefore, Harishchandra asks sage Narada. Sage Narada is a very Vedic Rishi. Sage Narada advises Harishchandra, you go and pray to Varuna Devata. So Varuna Devata grants the boon. The interesting thing is nothing comes free. Yajna you have done, true, but Varuna Devata also has a caveat. I will of course grant you the boon of getting a son, but in exchange, you should offer a human sacrifice. It's called Purushamedha. It is very much there in the Brahmana Brahmana period. So you must offer a sacrifice, and then who should be sacrificed? Your own son. What is the idea of granting a son and then asking that son to be offered in sacrifice, but for the sake of getting the heir? Harishchandra agrees. And as a result of this boon, he gets the son Rohita, or also known as Rohita Ashwa, and then Varuna came to demand that the child be handed over to him. This parallel you see in the Purusha Sukta also. So I don't know whether we have talked about Purusha Sukta in this series or not, but we have talked about the general idea of yajna. So in Purusha Sukta also, it is the dismemberment of the primordial Purusha for the sake of creating the universe. So here, the boy was to be given. Then Harishchandra tells Varuna, he is still a child and he is innocent infant. Why do you want a child who is not educated? So let me educate the child and make him a worthy offering for you. And Varuna said, yes. Then he goes away. Then Rohitashva's graduation takes place from the Gurukula. As soon as the graduation was over, again Varuna Devata comes and demands, you send me your son. He says, no, he's still young. He's a minor still. So, but then he's a minor, but he's learned. So I must also give him an opportunity to voluntarily come and then go with you. So, but since he is underage, he has no age of consent. So let us wait till he actually grows up. Because the contract would not be binding, isn't it, with a minor? So then he becomes an adult. Rohitaksha becomes an adult. And at that point of time, father calls him and says, hey, Rohitashva, this was the promise I made to Varuna when that's how you were born. Now be ready to be sacrificed to Varuna. But all of you who have got adult children know that they have a mind of their own. The son has, you might have done so many promises, but I want to enjoy my life. I cannot surrender my life. So I am not ready for this sacrifice. And he runs away from home and escapes to the forest. Aitareya Brahmana has a beautiful, beautiful story. I'm verbatim recounting from the mantras. So Varuna comes and then curses Harishchandra with a stomach illness. Stomach illness, gastritis or something like that, the person doesn't die, nor he is comfortable. So he goes on suffering with this stomach ailment. And Rohita would used to occasionally come and visit the father. But then every time father brings up, I promised you to Varuna, no, I am not interested. I don't want to lose my life. 6 years passed from them. Then Rohita was a bit worried. Any reasonable child will be concerned about their parent if they are not happy. I want to do something. And he says, I want to do something for my father who is agonizing. So he met a destitute Brahmana with 3 sons. Then Rohita, what he did was he offered 100 cows in exchange for one of the sons to replace him to be sacrificed to Varuna. The Brahmana agreed. Can you believe any father saying, I am ready for sacrificing my son for the sake of 100 cows? But it happened. He agreed. But then he said, I am very, very fond of my eldest son. I cannot send him. And his wife says, I'm very fond of my youngest son. I cannot send him. So the middle son, Shunashefa, was chosen to be the victim. And Varuna readily agreed for this replacement. So why did Varuna agree for this replacement? It is because a Brahmana by birth is superior to a Kshatriya. So that was the argument that was given. And therefore, I am getting a better deal. Instead of a Kshatriya sacrifice, I am getting a Brahmana sacrifice, and he agrees. See, all this is the nucleus for creating the Aranyaka and the Upanishads. Harishchandra arranges for the sacrifice and got in the form of priests. You remember I have mentioned that in any yajna, we need 4 priests. There has to be a Hotru, who is a scholar, learned person in Rigveda for invoking all the devatas. There must be a Udgatru, that is, who is a Samavedan. When the gods come to the altar, they sing songs of praise, mantras taken from the Rigveda. Then you have the Advaryu, who is actually conducts the yajna. He is expert in Yajurveda. And then you have the Atharva Veda and all master of all the 3 Vedas called Brahma, who is a supervisor. Harishchandra chooses 4 priests. Jamadagni, sage Jamadagni becomes the Advaryu. Vishwamitra becomes the Hotru. A sage by name Ayasya, many of you may have in your Gotra the name Kashyapa, Naidhrava, Ayasya, Trayarshaya. Many of you may have that Gotra. So this Ayasya becomes the Udgatru, and Vasishtha himself becomes Brahma. So the sacrificial animal, they ask for a sacrificial animal, which is usually a goat, because those days everybody used to eat meat. So they brought Shunashepa, this boy. All the priests in one voice refused even to bind Shunashepa to the sacrificial post. That post is called Yupa. The father of the Shunashepa was also present there. Then what Harishchandra does is, he tells the father of Shunashepa, I will give you 100 cows. Then the father agrees to tie his son to the sacrificial post. And he ties. The time came for dismembering Shunashepa and offering it into Agni. The priests who are supposed, Advaryo is supposed to do that. He refused to do it. I cannot harm this young boy. Then Shunashepa's father himself comes, and then he says, okay, I will dismember him and then give you parts of his body for sacrifice. See what greed can do. One's own son. Then Shunashepa prayed for the Rigveda Adidevatas. A very beautiful prayer is there in the Brahmana. He prayed for the Rigveda Adidevata. And the last of the hymns that he prayed, even to this day, people study that hymn with great attention, called the Ushas Sukta. In fact, even in my Veda classes, I teach the Ushas Sukta. When Shunashepa started chanting the Ushas Sukta, at that point of time, what happened? The bonds got loosened, and Harishchandra was cured of illness. And then Varna forgives that he doesn't want to take this child, looking at the eminence of Shunashepa. At this point, Shunashepa actually reviled against his father and refused to accompany him. And that is when Vishwamitra adopted him as his son. And then Shunashepa curses his father to become a Shudra. So the reason why I told you this dramatic story is to highlight that even within the Vedic culture, dharma was going through changes. It takes a little while for the establishment of the Sanatana Dharma as we know today. Experimentation has to happen. Some ideas will come. Those ideas are put to test in the laboratory of Yajna, and then they will be examined, discarded, reformatted, and that's what they have been doing. For example, Yajnas in which sacrifices were made of live animals, and Shunashepa is an extreme case. Usually it used to be only a goat. In Sanskrit, we call goat as Mesha. Yajna got renamed as Adhvara. Dhvara means himsa, dhara means actually it is violence, adhara means non-violence. So yajna started becoming non-violent. Mesha was substituted by Masha. Masha in Sanskrit means the urad dal. So that is why in the Shraddha, even to this day, in the olden days, they used to serve goat meat in Shraddhas. So since Advara came, Yajnas shunned sacrifices of animals. Nowadays, what we do in Shraddha, we make Uradvada. We have maintained the essence of yajna, but then we have turned away from the violent practices of the ancient um, yajna process. Then, in the meanwhile, another evolution was taking place. That was the institution of the ashrama system. And it was also forming at that point of time. So the Samhitas were studied in Brahmacharya, in studenthood. Then Brahmanas and Yajnas were performed in Grihasthashrama. So in Vedic society, the two classes, remember, it is not a hard and fast rule. A person must be a Brahmana's son to be a Brahmana, a Shudra's son is a Shudra. It is Varna and by Guna. That is how it was determined. So even though a person may be born of a Shudra, because of his knowledge, he will be actually become a Brahman. That please note very carefully. So the two classes, the learned class Brahmanas and the warrior class Kshatriyas, they started their contemplations on the philosophy of life because they were so intimately involved in society and they were keenly watching, and they were also the society makers. They were not just living in society, but they used to create the structure of society, and therefore they were very thoughtful people. So what they did was they started their contemplating on the philosophy of life, especially as they were getting aged. Because to do a yajna, it requires an enormous amount of physical strength. What a 20-year-old can do, an 80-year-old cannot do, obviously. And therefore, the Kshatriyas started delegating their royal duties to their sons. And then they started withdrawing from their active life. The idea of retirement started coming. The idea of retirement for the kings by handing over the power to their children. The idea of retirement for the aging Brahmanas, they delegated their teaching to their students in the Gurukula. And then they wanted to live peacefully in a quiet atmosphere. They found that the forests in the outskirts of towns and villages were highly, highly conducive for simple living and contemplative life. We do this even now. How did the suburb system come up? Because people wanted to be away from the hustle and bustle of downtown. So all the yajnas that they had performed, and those yajnas which they had performed for Loka Kalyana, had a salutary effect on their minds. They had achieved Chitta Shuddhi, a purity of mind. You may recall that in one of my very early talks last year, I had mentioned about Sureshwaracharya's 13-step process from the Naishkarmya Siddhi, where I said 13 step of spiritual progress. You may go back and watch the video on the YouTube. Nitya Karmanusthana, by means of doing every day's Nitya Karmanusthana, such as Sandhyavandana, Puja, and then worship, and it will lead to our commitment to Dharma. And from Dharma, all the sins are destroyed. What is meant by sins are destroyed? The mind becomes pure and tranquil. So these forest dwellers, with their mind calm and tranquil, and with the location which was conducive to peaceful living, what will normally happen? You look at the beautiful settings of the forest with the flowing river and the change of seasons and a simple living, nothing much. No need to build a big wealth, no need to have a very big house and maintain. In that simple living, they took to dhyana meditation. This is how meditation and the practice of meditation started as we enter into the time of the Aranyakas. Their contemplations actually centered around what they are used to. All their life, what is it they are used to? You can only meditate upon things you already know. Or if you don't know something, a guru will tell you, you meditate upon this. That also means that you can meditate only upon what you know. You cannot meditate upon what you don't know. So what is it these people knew? They only knew rituals and yajnas. And therefore they started contemplating and meditating on the what is this ritual? They started examining the ritual. What is the purpose? What is the metaphor of so many rituals? And then, in one of our sessions in future, if I get a chance, I will talk about the architecture of puja, just as a sidebar. We do puja every day, the Shodashopachara puja, the 16-step puja. Now let us see how you can do dhyana on puja. You start the puja with a sankalpa. You say that, please give me this, please give me that. You give me ayurarogya aishwarya abhridyartham samasta sanmangala vapyartham asmakam kutumbanam kshema sthairya virya vijaya ayuho arogya aishwarya abhridyartham. We ask for all this. And then what do you do at the end? You say kayena vacha manasendrerva बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृते स्वभावात् करोमि यद्यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि. That means, why ask for something after you get what you have asked for? Why should you give it up? You started the puja with this sankalpa, I want this, this, this. If the puja, you have done the puja with sincerity, all of that will be granted. And after getting all those benefits, you say, I don't want anything, I'm going to give it back to you, renounce it. What does it mean? That means, as you are going through these 16 steps, step by step, you realized non-possessiveness, non-clinging to things is the one which gives you Paramasukha. The highest joy is in non-clinging. It doesn't mean that you will throw your TV into the street. Don't get attached to it. That is all. So by and large, these Vedic people, especially the learned, who moved to the forest or the Aranyas, took with them the knowledge of their own branch of Veda. So adherence to each branch, Veda Shakha, to them were revealed in their dhyana the Aranyaka and the Upanishads of that branch of the Veda, which became the bridge between the rituals of Brahmanas called Karma Kanda and the knowledge system of the Upanishads called the Jnana Kanda. Possibly in the olden days, there might have been many, many Aranyakas, many forest treatises, because it's not one or two persons that went to the forest. It's not one or two kings that went to the forest. It's not that within 1 or 2 years people went to the forest. Hundreds of years, centuries, and scores of kings and brahmanas have gone there. So a lot of Aranyaka literature might have been there, like an enormous amount of Vedic corpus that we have lost. We might have lost a lot of Aranyakas also. Right now, as of today, we have 7 Aranyakas. From the Rigveda, we have the Aitareya Aranyaka and the Kaushitaki Shankayana Aranyaka is available. From the Yajurveda, from the Shukla Yajurveda, we have Brihadaranyaka. From the Krishna Yajurveda, we have two Aranyakas, the Taittiriya Aranyaka and the Maitrayaniya Aranyaka. From the Samaveda, we have Chandogya Aranyaka and Talavakara or Jaimini Aranyaka. In Atharva Veda, we do not have any available Aranyakas. So this is as far as the Aranyaka literature is concerned. So the kings and the Brahmanas and the other people also who actually admired this lifestyle of quietude, of learning, of scholarship, of meditation, of simple living, they all joined into these groups in the forest. And they became available to the householders and the brahmacharis in the cities and towns and villages who wanted to get their advice and knowledge. So they would come just as you would go to an ashram to meet with a Swamiji and ask questions and then learn something, or you would go to a Gurukula and ask for some advice. Likewise, there also people used to come, raise questions because of their knowledge of the yajna system, knowledge of the Samhita mantras, their knowledge of the meditation, coming out of meditation, they were able to respond to those questions. And those questions, conversations have been recorded in the Aranyaka mantras. I'll give a couple of examples, extraordinary examples from the Taittiriya Aranyaka, because my knowledge is a little bit limited to Taittiriya branch of Krishna Yajurveda. Even though I have studied Rigveda, I cannot claim any scholarship in those areas. So let me talk about what I know from the Taittiriya Aranyaka part. So many of you may be very familiar with a text called Aruna Prashna or the Surya Namaskara mantras from the Taittiriya Aranyaka, Krishna Yajurveda. In fact, during the Magha month, the month of Magha, we are in the month of Magha right now. Actually, today is the very auspicious Magha Sukla Saptami. It's called Ratha Saptami. On this day, we take a bath in the morning, Surya's worshipping Surya, having the leaf called Arka. Arka means Surya, actually. 7 leaves are taken. I don't know whether it's available in US or not. Those 7 leaves are taken and placed on the 7 parts of our body, and you take a sacred bath. And then you do a puja for Surya with a group of mantras called Trichakalpa. In fact, we used to do every Maghamasa and also every Dhanurmasa in Columbus. We used to do this all the time with our friends, the Trichakalpa Purvaka, Surya Namaskara, Aruna Prashna Parayana, and actual Surya Namaskara we used to do. 132 Namaskaras we used to do. So these mantras are actually a result of the tapas of these rishis, ancient rishis in the Aranya. So it is called Aruna Prashna. Prashna actually means question. So one of the questions that is picked up in Aruna Prashna for contemplation is a question all of us will have. How do we know anything? What is the method of knowing? This was the question. So the sage of Aruna Prashna, he says, please listen to this mantra. Smriti pratyakshamaityam anumanaschatushtayam. Smritihi pratyaksham aitikyam anumanaha. These 4 are the source for knowing anything. I want you to contrast between the story of Harishchandra Rohitashva, the sacrifice, the desire for the son, how the attitude has now shifted to knowledge. Here he is asking a question. Tell me, how do I know anything? How can I know? That's not the question. The question is, how do I know anything? Epistemology, in other words. What is epistemology? Then the text says there are four ways: smritihi, pratyaksham, aitihyam, anumanam. That means, based on the memory of how things are learned, given to us by ancient sages such as Manu, Parashara, etc., that is smriti. That is one source of how you can know things. Pratyaksham, aksha means a sense organ. Prati aksha means every sense organ. Here we are talking about five sense organs, five organs of knowledge: seeing, hearing, etc. Then the third one is aitihyam. Aitihyam means the stories, itihasa. We have heard the story of Harishchandra and we have heard the story of Rohitaksha. What should be done and what should not be done, and what should be done differently. Technically, this is called as kartum, what should be done; akartum, what should not be done; anyatha kartum, what should be done differently. And that will happen only when you study historical information, precedents, life of the elders, and that is called itihasa. Then finally, Anumana in this context of Aranyaka is Shishtachara, or the way in which noble people conduct themselves. These two very short mantras, Prati Pratyakshamaidikyam Anumanaschatushtayam, became the nucleus for an extraordinary branch of thinking, the Nyaya Shastra, the Vedic epistemology and logic. You can see the power of Aranyakas. One mantra, two mantra, it establishes a whole new discipline. Some of you from the Hindu Temple of Greater Chicago might have actually heard my dear friend Dr. Prabhakar, Dr. C.L. Prabhakar, who retired as professor of Sanskrit in Bangalore University, has actually translated the entire Aruna Prashna. It's a very good book to read. The famous Mantra Pushpa mantras, which you hear every day in the temple, this is from this section of Taittiriya Aranyaka. It is an excellent hymn which actually teaches Dharma. There is also a blessing on the nation. And in the Aranyakas, there are also mantras prescribing environmental discipline. Napsumutra puresham kuryat, na vivasanasnayat. You should not abuse water in public. Do not defecate or urinate in public water. Do not take bath when you are in the nude. Like that, the ethical parts also started getting introduced in the Aranyakas. Now look at the way in which the Aranyaka also provides a bridge towards Upanishads, towards a bridge towards knowledge. In this section, in the second part of the Taittiriya Aranyaka, there is a call for enthusiastic activity and for engagement with the world by doing service. Uttishtatama swapta agnimichhadhvam bharata. In fact, this became such a beautiful mantra from the Aranyaka. We took it and incorporated in the Mahanyasa, the worship of Shiva. So you can imagine, get up, uttishtata. Don't sleep. Maswapta. Go into the world, serve, study, learn. Till the last breath is there, be productive. Because this body is a very glorious gift by Ishvara. So the Aranyaka says, Devana Ampura Yodhya Hiranmaya Purusha. This body is a golden abode for the golden Purusha. It is the place where Ishvara resides. So make sure that you live well. And then it also talks about the advantage, what is the benefit of living of such a quality of life. This mantra you would have heard in the temple all the time, wherever you go and at homes. Yo vaita brahmano veda amritena vratam purim tasmai brahmacha brahmacha ayuh kirtim pracham daduhu. This is also from the Taittiriya Aranyaka. What it means is whoever knows and leads this lifestyle that I talked about all along, such a person will know Brahman. Now, here the idea of Brahman is introduced for the first time. That Brahman is Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma, as it is going to be established in the Upanishad later. A person experiences the joy of immortality. Not only that, the Lord actually bestows long life, fame, and name, and Vardhi Prajani. Underline Vardhi Prajani. You don't have to do Putra Kameshti Yada when you live like that. And then it gives a clarion call. Tapasvi Punyo Bhavati, Tapasvi Punyo Bhavati. A meditating person, a contemplating person, an introspective person, a person who serves his fellow beings with wisdom and knowledge is the most blessed of all. Tapasvi punyo bhavati. Friends, you can see how the ritual of yajna with material resources are now substituted by intellectual resources. The tapo yajna came. The only resource required for the discipline of contemplative life. It is possible, as I mentioned earlier, that the town dwellers would come from the forest and ask for clarification. One such beautiful example is there. Somebody comes and approaches the sage of the Aranyaka. What is this Yajnopavita you are talking about? What is this thread that these people are wearing? Why is it? What is the purpose of this? And they sit on facing east in the morning, and then they take some water and throw it into the air, chanting the mantra. What is going on here? They come and ask the sage. Now see, how should the sage answer a person who comes with such a question but having no background? Because suppose you want to talk about the Veding of the Yajnopavita, the Sandhya Vandana, the using of the Gayatri Mantra, and all that. Or you say, oh, Dharma Shastra says, Aharaha Sandhyam Upasita. Day and evening, you should always do Sandhya Vandana. Not a methodology. When you want to address let us say, a child, a 8-year or 10-year-old child will come to you and ask this question, why should I do all this? Let us say you plan a Upanayana Sanskara for your child who is at 8 years. And so ask, how do you answer? You'll go back to Brahmana style and say, I tell you, you do. Don't ask questions. But now we are in the Aranyaka stage where you have to actually respond. So instead of just asserting in that manner, what the Rishis of Aranyaka did was they start telling a story. You know, in olden days, there were some Rakshasas. And these Rakshasas did intense tapas. And pleased by their austerities, Prajapati, the creator, they asked these Rakshasas, what do you want? Then the Rakshasas said, we want to fight Aditya. Aditya is Surya. We want to fight Aditya. Okay, why do you want to fight? Because we want to deny him water. So Prajapati says, you have done so much of penance. Okay, granted. Now, for the learned person who is sitting there, the teacher turns and says, do you know what is the etymology of the word Aditya? Adana means taking. Ya means giving. So the Aditya is the one who receives water by evaporating from the sun. Then Ya means he gives it back after purifying the water. Ocean water is salty. Rainwater is sweet. Who made it? And therefore he is Aditya. Then we'll turn back to our Rakshasas. The Rakshasas attack Surya at his weakest moment. When is the sun in the weakest moment? In the morning at sunrise. Whether it is heat or whether it is light, it is the weakest moment. So they attack. What the Rakshasas did not ask was protection from the most powerful weapon, the Gayatri Mantra. So ever since, every morning, these Rakshasas attack Aditya. Then the devout people will stand facing the sun at sunrise, the Brahmavadinaha, as the Aranyaka says. What do they do? Purvabhimukha sandhyayam gayatriyabhimantrita apa urdhvam prakshipanti ta eta apo vajri bhutva tani rakshagamsi mande arune dvipe prakshipanti. Beautiful mantra. What they say is, these people who worship Aditya, Purvabhimukhaha, facing the east, at the dawn, Sandhyayam, Gayatriya Abhimantrita, what they take the water which has been consecrated by Gayatri Mantra, Apa Urdhvam Prakshipanti, they take this water and throw it towards the sun. Ta apaha, that water, Vajri Bhutva, becomes a very powerful weapon. Tani Rakshagumsi, those Rakshasas, Mandeharune Dvipe, Prakshipanti, it throws them into a forest called Mandeha. So this is a fantastic story to be told to children, but look at the metaphor of this story. Now Surya or Aditya is our own mind. He is the Shakti of the mind. What happens in the morning? Early in the morning for everybody, the mind is sluggish, manda. Then when we are fully up, it brings up all the desires, iha. Iha means desire. So mandeha means sluggishness and desires. It is a very dark place. Then Gayatriya Abhimantrita. When you infuse Gayatri, what do you say? Dhiyo yo na prachodayat. Inspire my mind. In an earlier presentation on this platform, I have spoken elaborately on Gayatri Mantra. In fact, I think we took 2 sessions to talk about Gayatri Mantra. And then what you do? Yat pradakshinam prakramanti tena papmanamavadhunvanti. After giving this arghya, you actually circumambulate around yourself. That means when you move the body, our where mental and physical sluggishness is vikshipanti, is banished. In fact, in Taittiriya Brahmana, there is actually a story which extols walking. We now in modern science we say every day you should walk. There is a whole story as to why you should walk in Taittiriya Brahmana. Thus, the Rishi of the Aranyaka gives an attractive justification for the most important ritual of Sandhya. And then to conclude, the Rishi also says, why should you do Sandhya every day? To banish sluggishness, to make your mind sharp. And after that, you say that whoever Vidwan, the learned person, at sunrise and at sense, Udyantam Astancha, and then facing the sun, Adityam Abhidhyayan. When you do this, Brahmano Sakalam Bhadramashnute, he obtains all the auspiciousness. So, in stories, in metaphors of the yajna, in interpreting the meaning of the ritual, and then establishing dharma and ethics, the rishis of Aranyaka, and what now they say, Brahmana Sakalam Bhadramashnute, one who practices this meditative techniques, he obtains all the auspiciousness. And now the Rishi provides a bridge between ritual and realization. The title of today's talk, Ritual and Realization, and says one who contemplates in this way, he understands Asavadityo Brahma. This Aditya who is there is the manifest Brahman. So introduces our mind to start thinking of the highest reality. We'll see more in our next meeting. Thank you very much.
Sanat garu, Sanat? Hello, Sanat.
Yeah, we can hear you, sir. Yeah, thank you.
Sanat, can you hear me? Yeah.
And who has been a very active person and taking great interest in all these religious matters, is our chairman, and we continue to work together and have great pleasure in doing so. And he's also a very learned scholar in Veda, and asked Narayanan to say a few words. And if anybody has any questions, please hold on for a few minutes. I will ask Dr. Narayan to bring those questions to Dr. Asatri, and we will listen to the answers to that. And we will conclude with
Thank
a prayer.
you. Yeah. Ashwatji, it was excellent presentation. Thank you for taking us through the Aranyaka. We felt like we were all sitting there, and maybe one of those classes you are going to branch off to Aranyaka Upanishad, Taittiriya Upanishad, or Aitareya Upanishad, or something which is going to be even more exciting, because most of the team members here are very fully aware of all those mantras where we are reciting on a daily basis. And then you will branch off into other very more precise, intelligent Brahma Sutra. The idea of this class is giving us a great practical, tidbits about what we are doing, which without knowing, sometimes we keep doing, that will help us understand more precisely. I also would request all our people on the call that we are going to celebrate from the Hindu Dharma Committee Madhva Navami celebration on Saturday. I want all of you to be there. Madhvacharya is one of the great philosophers of Sanatana Dharma, who codified his philosophy based on the Brahma Sutram, which is again a gist of Dr. Ashwath was saying about the, like Aranyakam and Upanishad. So we will celebrate the Utsavam on Saturday. Thank you very much, Ashwaji again, and Sagar Garu and Sanat and Parthiban for an excellent support giving to us. Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
have a question. Okay.
Questions, right, Sanat Garu?
One simple question. Was there any historically Vedic prayer to have a female child? We always hear they prayed to have a son. Was there any historical point where a person wanted to have a female child? And why not?
I have not come across any such indications. Though in Mahabharata, whether it was the desire of Drupada or not, from the Agni, Draupadi also comes. So that's why she is probably she is the one I can think of who is coming out of a yajna process.
Well, other question, real. The story you told about Harishchandra and children is quite different than Nachiketa. Nachiketa, he offered himself to Yamadharmaraja, whereas the other children did not.
You can also see that's also a metaphorically a change, a shift from the ritualistic to the contemplative, because Nachiketa's story is part of the Kathopanishad. So by that time, the Upanishadic age had already dawned. I have a couple of other points to make on the Aranyaka. For example, again, as part of the ritual, in all the homas that happen in various temples, we also have what is called as Chittipanna. Chittipanna is where at the end of all the homa, they actually make another homa. Chittisrika, Chittamadyam, Vagvedihi. So some of the metaphorical, that's also a transition point from ritual to Upanishads. So in our next meeting, we will take that so we can bridge with the Upanishadic thinking.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Harihi Om. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I hope it was not too dense. Because
No. Thank you, Aswath. Very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Parthibanji.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Aswath ji.
arranging everything. Thank you.
धन्यवाद.